Good morning. My name is Sergeant Kevin Kwan, Q-U-O-N, and I'm a sergeant with the Scottsdale Police Department. What we'll be doing today is going over the series of events and timeline that led up to the incidents that occurred with the officer-involved shooting on January 6th. We'll not be going into full detail related to the officer-involved shooting, but we will talk about the investigations that led up to it and what happened subsequently after that. I'm going to give you a brief timeline when we start, and then I'll introduce Lieutenant Lee Campbell, C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L, who is our investigative lieutenant that will go over a little bit more of the details. At the end of the statements that we make, we will have an opportunity for everyone to ask questions, and we will answer them if we're able to. Again, related to investigative means, we may not be able to, but we will go over that after the statements. Our investigation starts back to October 12th. Officers were called to the Marin apartments in Scottsdale, reference to sexual assault that occurred in the early morning hours. When officers arrived, our offender was gone from the scene. So our investigative team came in and began to investigate the crime that occurred that day. On October 14th, there was a news release asking for the public's help with identifying a possible offender. Our investigation continued tirelessly through that entire month until November 15th, when we had identified a couple potential witnesses that we again asked the public's help in identifying so that we could talk to related to this investigation. As the investigation continued through December and into January, 37-year-old Kenneth Hearn was identified as a possible investigative lead. That led up to January 6th, when a search warrant was granted by a judge for Kenneth Hearn. On January 6th, in the evening time, a search warrant was attempted to be served at an apartment complex in downtown Phoenix between around First Avenue and Roosevelt. During that incident, there was gunfire from our suspect, Kenneth Hearn, and one of our sergeants, Sergeant Scott Galbraith, was injured during that shooting. Officers did return fire, and the suspect, Kenneth Hearn, fled the apartment complex. Those investigations will not be talked about at this time because they are still ongoing. With the officer-involved shooting that happened in Phoenix, Phoenix PD is still investigating that, and with the subsequent officer-involved shooting that occurred in Tempe the next day. So what I want to do is introduce Lieutenant Lee Campbell, who will give you a little bit more detail of the investigation that led up to the events from January 6th. Lieutenant Campbell.
Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lee Campbell, C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L. I am the Persons Crimes Lieutenant under my watch. I oversee investigations that are Violent Crimes Unit, Human Trafficking, Special Victims Unit, Domestic Violence, and our Crisis Intervention. I'm going to go into some of the details that Kevin talked about. On October 12th at 2022, Scottsdale PD responded to the Marin apartments, reference a delayed sex assault. Once patrol officers arrived, they secured the crime scene, and detectives from the Special Victim Unit, as well as numerous other detectives, responded and made contact with the victim, who was identified as a 70-year-old female. During that time, the detectives from my unit worked with crime scene specialists to collect evidence and to do a thorough interview with the victim. The victim did state that she was sexually assaulted, a violent sexual assault, and at that time the suspect had a weapon. Then my detectives worked tirelessly. I mean, we threw every type of piece at this, and for almost a month, we conducted numerous interviews, from interviewing employees of the apartment complex, doing a thorough canvass of the complex, and interviewing people that lived there. Through the investigation, we were able to obtain a video of a black male leaving San Marin at the time that we believe that the sex assault had occurred. In that video was also a white pickup truck. We were able to identify that truck. We conducted an interview with the driver of that truck. However, we were not able to identify the black male that was seen leaving at that time. He was carrying a black backpack and smoking a cigarette. So we conducted a media release on November 15th, 2022. We received 2 anonymous tips identifying the black male leaving as Kenneth Ray Hearn. At this time, Kenneth Hearn was labeled as a witness to the crime because he was seen leaving the area at the time that we believe the sex assault had occurred. We'll jump forward 3 more days. November 18th, we received a 3rd tip from an anonymous person, and they identified him as Kenneth Hearn, and they also put him in the complex the night before the investigation. The Scottsdale Forensic Service Division was able to obtain a profile from the crime scene, and then that's when detectives conducted extensive follow-up with known acquaintances of Kenneth Hearn, and we were able to locate a photo of him, and we believe that was the same subject that was seen leaving the apartment complex on the day of the sex assault. We'll go fast forward to January 5th, but please don't let it be from that time. We never stopped working. We were working tirelessly. The staff that's in the back of this room are the ones that were really responsible for this, and they worked tirelessly. But on January 5th, 2023, Kenneth Hearn moved from a witness to a person of interest. Kenneth knew that we were looking for him. He knew that we wanted to interview him, and he was actively avoiding any police contact. We even tried to have an acquaintance call him, but he refused to speak to us. Through the investigation, we did conduct a thorough investigation, did several interviews, we received numerous citizen tips, and that was able to locate Kenneth Hearn on January 6th at 1st Ave in Roosevelt. That was the night of the officer-involved shooting. On January 6th, the Scottsdale Police Department did request a search warrant for Kenneth Hearn to recover DNA, forensic evidence, and digital evidence. And he also had an active warrant for his arrest out of Mesa for failure to appear on a DUI. So on January 6th, that's when detectives from our Special Assignment Unit went to serve the warrant on Kenneth Hearn. Kenneth Hearn was in the apartment complex and did fire, striking our officer. I will not go into anything about that investigation because after that, that will be Phoenix's investigation, so we're going to kind of bounce forward. But I'll tell you, thank you to our brothers and sisters that are out there. I mean, numerous agencies helped us, and Phoenix was a major player that night on January 6th, and they were able to locate, well, you know, let me go back. At 1909, that's when our officer-involved shooting occurred in Phoenix. So we'll go fast forward. January 7th, DNA was collected from Mr. Hearn. On January 9th, our Scottsdale Crime Laboratory confirmed that the DNA collected from Kenneth Hearn was the suspect that committed the sex assault on the 7-year-old victim. On January 11th, this is less than 20 hours from the shooting, Kenneth Hearn was contacted in Tempe and was involved in an officer-involved shooting with Phoenix. The gun that was recovered on Kenneth Hearn that morning was the same gun that was used to shoot Sergeant Galbraith. Luckily, on Tuesday, members of my staff were able to contact the victim and bring some closure to her. We work tireless hours to solve these cases. I can't thank my staff enough for the amount of work that they've done in this, and the whole purpose was to bring a violent offender off the road, and so that he cannot victimize another person. I'd also like to do some more thank yous to our patrol officers, our crime scene specialists, our investigative detectives, our crime analysis unit, our Police Crisis Intervention, Forensic Service Division, the Scottsdale Special Assignment Unit, Scottsdale and Phoenix Fire Department, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, community members who provided tips and leads that identified who Kenneth Hearn was and his location, our local federal partners to include Honor Health forensic nurses, Phoenix PD, Tempe PD, the FBI, and ATF. I would be remiss as I sit here and I look back if I didn't thank two detectives, Ashley Hasler and Evelyn Ivanoff, for their hard work to solve this investigation. And that was all coordinated by their supervisor, Ryan Mercier. Thank you.
You can go ahead and open it up for questions.
Can we ask about the decision to try to apprehend this man at that time, at that place, when we know it was kind of a crowded area at that time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've been looking for Mr. Hearn for some time. We were able to, through tips and leads, we were able to finally identify him to be at that apartment complex on January 6th. At this time, the decision was made because he is a violent offender and committed a violent offense that we could not let him leave. And so that was the time to make that decision to go ahead and apprehend him for our search warrant as well as the arrest warrant from Mesa.
You have a certain amount of time on that search warrant to act?
We do, but this was the time that we actually put him in that apartment complex.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just two questions. So did he live in that apartment complex? Just for clarity.
He was there at the time.
Okay.
So that's what I'll answer.
And then also, during a press conference Friday night, the police chief described him as a violent criminal wanted for a number of crimes. Can you just talk a little bit about these previous crimes? I know there's a sexual assault, obviously you guys have been investigating, but what were some of his past occurrences with?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into his past criminal offenses because that's not going to be part of our investigation, but he is a violent criminal. He does have criminal history, and so that's what I'll say on that.
How long did you guys know he was in that apartment?
We were able to put him there that morning on January 6th.
Is there a reason why you didn't act earlier in the day?
Well, as you can imagine, these are very dynamic situations, and we are dealing with a violent offender, and it's not something that we're just going to run into. We take a lot of thought and tactics and things like that just to not run in. We try to do everything to minimize the safety to our officers, to our detectives, so therefore we formulate game plans.
Are you able to say, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Are you able to say how you were able to obtain the DNA evidence on January 6th and then confirm it as a match before the Tempe shooting?
So that the DNA did not come back before the Tempe shooting. That was after. The Tempe shooting was on, I believe, on the 9th. Okay. Sorry, it was on the 8th. So, nope, 6th, 7th, 8th. The Tempe shooting was on the Phoenix-involved shooting in Tempe was on the 8th. We were able to confirm this on the 9th. So DNA was collected per the search warrant from the Superior Court. That was collected, sent to our Forensic Service Division. They were able to analyze to confirm that is it a match to Kenneth Hearn.
I just want to clarify. The DNA that was collected was on January 6th or was days later?
No, I'm sorry, that was collected off Kenneth Hearn. That was on, he was shot, or he was taken into custody on, I believe, it would be January 8th.
Okay.
And then we got confirmation on January 9th.
After he was pronounced deceased.
That is,
it was taken post the Tempe involved incident.
Yes, sorry.
Just wanted to clarify.
It was after, but we didn't get the confirmation until after the Tempe shooting. I think your original question was before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And to be clear, how did you track him to Tempe? Were those more tips or friends of his that led you there? So
it's a good question. We did a lot of work. A lot of it was through tips, leads, thorough investigation, and interviewing acquaintances of Kenneth Hearn.
Tracking to Tempe was via Phoenix investigation, though.
Yes.
At that point it was Phoenix.
Just to confirm, yes, that was to Phoenix.
Where did you identify him? Was it a traffic stop, or did you identify him in a home?
Well,
Can you clarify that question?
Yeah. When you found him on January 8th, was it a traffic stop?
That was not our investigation. Yeah. That is going to be Phoenix's investigation that you guys can refer to them for. Again, once he fled the scene from our officer-involved shooting in Phoenix. Phoenix took over that investigation.
The attack on the 70-year-old, just random? Any detail about that?
Through our investigation, we do not show any relationship or link between Kenneth and our victim.
Did the victim live in that apartment complex, and did Hearn live in that apartment complex?
The victim did live there, Hearn did not.
Was Hearn known to frequent that apartment complex?
He was.
Are you able to give a little bit, excuse me, sorry, are you able to give me a little bit more specifics how the execution of the search warrant went, and then at what point he fled, and how that process works? Can you just walk me through that?
So I don't even know if I can speak about that. That's probably a Phoenix part. Once that the shots were fired, then Phoenix police took over that investigation. So I don't want to speak on anything before that.
Before the shots were fired, how was the search warrant executed?
Well, that's when it comes down to the tactical side of that, and I don't want to speak for them. I ran the investigative portion of this.
Okay, so you guys had the assistance of Phoenix PD to serve the warrant?
No, we will be putting out a video shortly within the next couple of weeks that will give more of the insight, kind of the critical incident debrief related to that. Go ahead.
I'm wondering, I'm hoping you can answer this question, and I apologize if this is inaccurate, but it seems like in December, the police department submitted a case involving Hearn with supposedly false identity. Can you give a little insight into that?
That is correct. He was arrested and he provided a fake name and signed some documents under a fake name. And so that's what that was for. I believe it was for an assault in a DC.
An assault and what?
Disorderly conduct.
Anything about the officer who was shot? We understood originally the bullet maybe came through a wall, and can you tell us where on his person he was hit and how he's doing now?
So initially, during the service of the search warrant, our sergeant was struck from rounds shot by Kenneth Hearn that came through the wall and struck our sergeant in the abdomen. Our sergeant is doing well, has been released from the hospital, and is set to make a full recovery. So we are thankful that, again, our fire medic personnel was on scene with him to be able to treat him right away, as well as people at the hospital and all the medical personnel involved with it.
Did it somehow inch past? I assume he's wearing protective gear. Did it find a little gap in there somewhere, do you know, or is that?
It did strike him and injured him, so.
I guess so.
Did Hearn break into the apartment, or like into the victim's apartment, or how did he get in?
Are you talking about the original investigation?
Yeah.
Yeah, we released that. Mr. Hearn went into the victim's apartment through an open patio door.
If he was known to frequent that apartment, are you looking to add any additional charges or seek out an arrest for a person he was possibly staying with?
We still have that investigation going, and there is potential. Yes.
Can you just talk a little bit about the next steps moving forward? Is this case closed, or what is next for you guys?
So our case is closed for the victim. Yes, however, the investigation is still ongoing with known acquaintances, potentially for Mr. Hearn. We're still running an active investigation on that.
I know you can't give a lot of specifics because it appears to be gruesome with the attack on the 70-year-old woman. Are you able to just give some details about what happened and how she called 911, anything like that? You guys were alerted.
I'm not going to go into details because I know the victim is watching this, and out of respect for her, I'm not going to go into that. But it was a violent sexual assault, and the offender had a gun at the time.
Is that kind of a warning for locking doors and windows kind of thing? I mean, you never know.
So we did talk about this in our original news release. Anytime that you are at home, or when the weather seems to cool down a little bit, we want to make sure that you are staying vigilant for yourself. Having alarms, having bright lights, it's all the stuff that we talk about from crime prevention in itself as a deterrent. It's not necessarily saying there's no blame on the victim at all. That is not the case of what we're trying to talk about. But we just need to be cognizant of that and give yourselves every opportunity at any given time to help protect yourself with it. Are there any more questions?
Can you say who's running the investigation for each separate OIS? So it's
Yes.
Phoenix PD for the first, and then it's Tempe Police for the second?
Correct. Our Scottsdale Police officer-involved shooting is being investigated by the Phoenix Police Department because it occurred in Phoenix. Phoenix's officer-involved shooting is being investigated by Tempe Police.
And then you mentioned video will eventually come out showing what led up to serving that warrant. That's going to be issued by Scottsdale Police Department, not, although it is ran by Phoenix and Tempe separately?
So we will do a critical incident debrief video that will give a little bit into what led up to the shooting for our officer-involved shooting.
So that's the search warrant?
Correct. And that should be coming out within a couple weeks or so.
And maybe just one, how important were those tips that came in, and could you do it without them? Kind of, yeah.
What we like to say mostly is that we appreciate our community's support. When something like this happens, it is imperative that we work alongside with our community and allowing them to assist us when we may reach an avenue that leads to a block. And so having our community members reach out, let us know of what they're seeing. We talk about this all the time of, if you see something, say something. That's exactly what our community members are doing here to help get this violent offender off of the streets.
Do you believe that there are other victims of Hearn?
We can't answer that. We really don't know at this point.
Were any resources provided to the victim?
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So here in Scottsdale, we're very, very fortunate to have a police crisis intervention service system. So they've been around since, I believe, 1975. They're made up of 7 phenomenal human beings that provide services. You know, the day that our victim reported this, we provided a PCIS specialist, Diana Imperial, and she walked with her and was with her through this whole process. So they are provided services, and anything else that they need, that we can provide them those types of referrals as well. But she was well taken care of.
I apologize if I missed this. Why was Scottsdale the lead agency on it if she lived in Phoenix, downtown Phoenix?
No, she lived in Scottsdale.
She did?
That is correct. Yep.
I thought you said that she lived in the apartment.
Our victim lived in San Marin.
Got it.
In Scottsdale.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you just talk generally speaking about what it's like for officers to execute these warrants? I mean, do they go in thinking these are always dangerous type situations? I mean, just kind of generally speaking what it's like.
Yeah, I will say that any type of search warrant, it's an unknown. And so when you make unknowns, and especially when you're dealing with a violent offender like Kenneth Hearn, it raises the stakes. So therefore, we do, you know, I think the question was, why didn't we just act immediately? We pre-plan. We take every type of precaution to ensure that not only the public is safe, but as well as our officers. I've been doing this for a long time, and every time it goes out, might get a little heartbeat. It goes up a little bit. So yes, these are, the men and women that do that are courageous.
Is there anything you would have done differently for serving that warrant?
We don't really speculate on what we could have done differently. There's always debriefs that come afterwards that what could we do better in the future. Mm-hmm. But that's why Lieutenant Campbell was talking about, we pre-plan. These are all dynamic situations that happen every single time that we do it, and they're not the same. There are different residences, different apartments, different areas where search warrants can get served. But our special assignment unit and our SWAT team train constantly for evolving situations. So again, we don't speculate, we learn from it to hope that we can do something differently in the future.
Have you guys provided any information, sorry if I just missed this, but on where that apartment complex was in Phoenix?
Yeah, it was right near 1st Avenue and Roosevelt in downtown Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Okay, we appreciate you guys coming out. And again, in the next couple of weeks, we will have a video that will kind of show a little bit leading up to the search warrant for our officer-involved shooting. And again, please contact Phoenix PD for that investigation and Tempe PD for the subsequent investigation after that. Thank you very much.